Welcome to TrueCrime Unveiled Podcast. Dive deep into the mysteries that captivate us. If you appreciate this episode, please consider liking and subscribing to support us. Today, we delve into the intricate web of deceit spun by Bernie Madoff, a name synonymous with one of the largest financial frauds in history. For decades, Madoff cultivated an image of success and exclusivity, attracting a clientele of high-net-worth individuals, charities, and institutional investors. His investment firm, Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, LLC, promised consistent, above-average returns, seemingly defying market fluctuations. But behind the facade of respectability lurked a meticulously constructed Ponzi scheme, a house of cards built on lies and illusion, destined for an inevitable and catastrophic collapse. The sheer scale of the deception is staggering, leaving a trail of devastated lives and financial ruin in its wake. Madoff's operation wasn't a sophisticated, cutting-edge financial instrument. It was, at its core, a simple scheme relying on new investor money to pay returns to existing investors. There were no actual investments being made. The returns investors received were simply funds from other individuals caught in the same web of deceit. This classic Ponzi structure allowed Madoff to maintain the illusion of profitability for years, lulling investors into a false sense of security. He fostered an aura of exclusivity, making his fund seem like a privileged club that only a select few could join. This strategy played into the psychological biases of his investors, many of whom were prominent figures in society, further bolstering the scheme's credibility. The meticulous records, the consistent returns, and Madoff's esteemed reputation within the financial community all contributed to a sense of unwavering trust. Few questioned the mechanics behind the seemingly miraculous returns. Madoff's operation existed largely outside the scrutiny of regulatory bodies, further enabling the fraud to perpetuate for an astonishing length of time. His position as a former chairman of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange lent him an air of legitimacy and influence, shielding him from suspicion. This complex interplay of factors allowed Madoff to operate undetected for years, weaving a tapestry of deception that would ultimately unravel, leaving behind a legacy of financial devastation and shattered trust. It's difficult to comprehend the audacity of Madoff's scheme, its prolonged existence, and the devastating impact it had on countless individuals and institutions. We'll explore the intricacies of his operation, examining the warning signs that were missed or ignored, and the devastating consequences of this monumental fraud. We'll also delve into the human element of this story, exploring the motivations of Madoff himself and the devastating impact on the victims caught in his web of lies. This is a story of ambition, deception, and the devastating consequences of unchecked greed. Less than person one greater than. Before the storm hit, before the world learned the name Bernie Madoff, the communities he ensnared lived a life of quiet prosperity. Palm Beach, a haven of manicured lawns and shimmering ocean views, was the epicenter. Here, amidst the exclusive country clubs and elegant waterfront mansions, a sense of security and established wealth permeated the air. Days unfolded with predictable rhythm. Golf games, charity luncheons, cocktail parties under the setting sun, the clinking of champagne glasses, the gentle lapping of waves against yachts, the soft murmur of polite conversation. These were the sounds of a world seemingly untouched by hardship. For many, Madoff's investment firm was the quiet engine driving this idyllic lifestyle, a trusted partner ensuring their financial future. There was little reason to question, to doubt, to suspect the darkness lurking beneath the surface of their gilded lives. Many of Madoff's victims were philanthropists, donating generously to hospitals, universities, and arts organizations. They were pillars of their community, their names adorning plaques and buildings, testaments to their generosity and success. They believed in giving back, in securing a better future for others. They held board positions, chaired galas, and their influence rippled through the social fabric of Palm Beach and beyond. Their lives were interwoven, a tight-knit community built on shared values and trust. They vacationed together, celebrated milestones together, and unknowingly would soon face financial ruin together. The illusion of stability, of a secure future carefully built over decades, was about to shatter, leaving behind a wreckage of shattered dreams and broken trust. One could almost taste the salty air mingled with the scent of blooming jasmine. The mornings began with leisurely walks along the beach, the warm sand between their toes, before moving on to the meticulously maintained golf courses. The afternoons were filled with bridge games, book clubs, and shopping expeditions on Worth Avenue. Evenings brought elegant dinners, often hosted in sprawling estates, where conversations revolved around family, travel, and the latest happenings within their exclusive circles. This was a world where worries seemed distant, where the future was painted in rosy hues of continued prosperity. The idea that their financial security, the very foundation of their lives, was built on a lie was an unimaginable horror, a betrayal that would cut deep and leave lasting scars. These were individuals who had spent their lives building their fortunes, some through entrepreneurship, others through inheritance. They were careful with their money, entrusting it to Madoff, a man who projected an air of quiet competence and trustworthiness. He cultivated an image of exclusivity, making his fund seem like a privileged club, one that not everyone could join. This air of exclusivity further solidified the trust placed in him, creating a sense of shared secrecy and special access. Little did they know, this exclusivity was a meticulously crafted illusion, a smokescreen concealing the largest Ponzi scheme in history, a scheme that would decimate their wealth and leave them grappling with the devastating consequences of misplaced trust. Let's delve deeper into the seemingly ordinary life Madoff cultivated. He lived in a penthouse apartment on Manhattan's Upper East Side, a world of privilege and exclusivity. He had a home in Montauk, Long Island, a beach house retreat, a place associated with relaxation and normalcy. He owned a yacht named Bull, a symbol, perhaps, of his aggressive market approach. He sat on the boards of prestigious charities and mingled with the elite. All of this created an aura of success, of trustworthiness. It painted a picture of a man who had mastered the financial world, someone who knew how to generate wealth, not only for himself, but also for his investors. This carefully crafted image was crucial to the success of his scheme. It lulled investors into a false sense of security, making them less likely to question the consistently high returns they were receiving. It created a world where suspicion seemed out of place. Indeed, the veneer of normalcy was Madoff's most powerful tool. He and his wife, Ruth, were active philanthropists, donating to hospitals, universities, and arts organizations. They were prominent figures in the social circles of New York and Palm Beach. He cultivated an image of being a financial wizard, but also a family man, a philanthropist, a pillar of the community. This image helped to deflect scrutiny. People trusted him not just because of his financial reputation, but also because of his apparent integrity and generosity. They believed he was one of them, someone who shared their values and had their best interests at heart. This was the carefully constructed facade that allowed his fraudulent operation to thrive for so long, undetected, beneath the surface of respectability. It allowed him to operate in plain sight. Yet, within this meticulously crafted image of success and normalcy, subtle cracks began to appear. Whispers and rumors circulated in financial circles. Some analysts questioned how Madoff consistently achieved such high returns, especially during market downturns. These were just faint signals at first, easily dismissed by those captivated by Madoff's charisma and the allure of his consistent profits. The returns he offered seemed too good to be true, defying the logic of fluctuating markets. But these whispers were largely drowned out by the chorus of praise and the testimonials of satisfied investors. The image of stability and prosperity Madoff projected was so convincing that it overshadowed any emerging doubts. The shadow of suspicion was faint, almost imperceptible, against the backdrop of his carefully constructed world. It's a classic case of cognitive dissonance. People were more inclined to believe the narrative that confirmed their existing beliefs, the desire for financial security, and the trust they placed in Madoff's persona. They had invested their life savings, their retirement funds, with this man. To acknowledge the possibility of fraud would be to confront a devastating reality. It would shatter their sense of security and their trust in the system. So, they chose to ignore the warning signs, the subtle discrepancies, the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. They preferred the comfort of believing in the illusion, even as the foundations of that illusion were slowly beginning to crumble. They were, in a sense, complicit in their own deception, clinging to the hope that their investments were safe. Let's delve into the mechanics of Madoff's scheme. It was, at its core, a classic Ponzi scheme. He promised investors consistent, high returns, regardless of market fluctuations. This was an alluring proposition, especially for those wary of the volatile stock market. Instead of actually investing the money, Madoff used funds from new investors to pay returns to existing ones. This created the illusion of a successful investment strategy. He fostered an air of exclusivity, making it seem like a privilege to be part of his investment fund. This tactic further lured in wealthy individuals and institutions, who were eager to join what they perceived as an elite club. The scheme thrived on secrecy and deception, with Madoff meticulously crafting a facade of legitimacy. He fabricated account statements, showing impressive but entirely fictitious gains. It's crucial to understand that Madoff didn't operate in a vacuum. He cultivated a network of feeder funds, individuals, and institutions who directed clients to his firm. These intermediaries earned substantial commissions, further incentivizing them to maintain the charade. They, either wittingly or unwittingly, played a key role in expanding the reach of the fraud. Furthermore, Madoff exploited regulatory loopholes and weaknesses in the financial system. For years, he managed to evade detection by the Securities and Exchange Commission, despite multiple red flags raised by whistleblowers like Harry Markopolos. This raises serious questions about the adequacy of oversight at the time. His operation was remarkably simple in its structure, yet devastatingly effective in its execution. The earliest identifiable victims of Madoff's scheme were close friends and family members who invested with him in the early stages. While the exact timeline is difficult to pinpoint due to the clandestine nature of the operation, evidence suggests that the fraud had been running for decades, possibly as far back as the 1960s. These early investors, often unaware of the fraudulent nature of the returns, became unwitting participants in the ever-expanding web of deceit. Their initial investments, coupled with the promised high returns, served as the foundation upon which Madoff built his empire of lies. As the scheme grew, it ensnared larger investors, including charitable foundations, pension funds, and prominent figures in the financial world. The very nature of a Ponzi scheme demands continuous growth to sustain itself. Madoff needed a constant influx of new capital to pay off existing investors and maintain the illusion of profitability. As the scheme expanded, the pressure to attract more funds intensified. This led Madoff to aggressively pursue new investors, often leveraging his reputation and connections within the financial community. The larger the scheme became, the more vulnerable it was to collapse. Any significant downturn in the market or a wave of investor withdrawals could trigger a cascade of events that would expose the fraud. And that is precisely what happened in the late 2000s as the global financial crisis unfolded. The news of Madoff's arrest spread like wildfire. It was December 11, 2008, and the world was already reeling from the financial crisis. This revelation felt like a sucker punch, a betrayal of trust on an unprecedented scale. Investors, many of whom had entrusted their life savings to Madoff, were in disbelief. Phone lines at the Securities and Exchange Commission were jammed. People huddled around televisions, desperately seeking answers. The initial reports were fragmented, painting a picture of a scheme so complex and audacious that it seemed impossible. The numbers being thrown around were staggering. Billions of dollars vanished into thin air. The air was thick with confusion and a growing sense of dread. The holiday season, usually a time of joy and celebration, was overshadowed by a chilling realization. The world of finance, as they knew it, had been irrevocably shaken. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Imagine the sheer panic of realizing your retirement fund, your children's college fund, everything you'd worked for, was gone. Victims ranged from individual retirees to charitable foundations, from Hollywood celebrities to European royalty. Everyone was scrambling to understand the scope of the fraud and their potential losses. Lawyers were inundated with calls. The media descended upon Madoff's Upper East Side apartment building, capturing images of stunned residents and bewildered onlookers. The story dominated headlines, pushing the ongoing economic crisis to the back burner. The sheer scale of the deception was difficult to grasp. People were not just angry, they were terrified. The world seemed to be crumbling around them, and Madoff's arrest was just another tremor in an already unstable landscape. The days following the arrest were filled with a growing sense of unease. The initial shock gave way to a chilling realization. This wasn't just a financial crime. It was a deeply personal betrayal. Many of Madoff's victims were close friends, family members, and members of his tight-knit community. He had cultivated an aura of trustworthiness and exclusivity, making his scheme all the more devastating. People began to question everything they thought they knew about him. The man they had admired and respected was now exposed as a master manipulator, a con artist who had shattered lives and eroded trust in the entire financial system. The whispers started, then the accusations, then the lawsuits. The world watched as the meticulously crafted facade of Bernard Madoff crumbled, revealing the monstrous deception beneath. The fear wasn't just about the money. It was about the loss of security, the shattering of a belief system. Madoff's Ponzi scheme wasn't just a financial crime. It was an emotional one. It preyed on people's trust, their hopes, and their dreams. It exposed the vulnerabilities of a system that was supposed to protect them. Support groups sprang up, offering a space for victims to share their stories and grapple with the emotional fallout. The sense of betrayal was palpable. People felt foolish, ashamed, and deeply hurt. Many struggled to come to terms with the reality that their financial security and their faith in human nature had been irrevocably damaged. The ripple effect of Madoff's actions extended far beyond the immediate victims, casting a long shadow of doubt and suspicion over the entire financial industry. Let's delve deeper into the psychology of Bernie Madoff. On the surface, he projected an image of success, trustworthiness, and philanthropy. He chaired NASDAQ, served on the board of the Securities Industry Association, and was a prominent philanthropist. This outward persona of respectability and generosity allowed him to gain the trust of countless individuals and institutions, many of whom invested their life savings with him. He cultivated an aura of exclusivity, making potential investors feel privileged to be part of his investment fund. This carefully crafted image of success played a crucial role in perpetuating the fraud for so long. People simply couldn't reconcile the image of the successful philanthropist with that of a con artist. This cognitive dissonance allowed Madoff to operate undetected for years. Precisely. It's a classic case of deception, built on a foundation of perceived legitimacy. Madoff understood the power of appearances. He leveraged his position within the financial industry to create a veneer of credibility. He wasn't some shadowy figure operating on the fringes. He was a respected member of the financial establishment. This allowed him to exploit the inherent trust people place in authority figures and institutions. Furthermore, the consistent returns he delivered, regardless of market fluctuations, further reinforced the illusion of his financial prowess. Investors, blinded by their own desire for wealth and reassured by Madoff's reputation, failed to question the mechanics of his seemingly infallible investment strategy. This combination of trust, perceived expertise, and consistent returns created a perfect storm for deception. And that's where the psychological manipulation comes in. Madoff understood human greed and the desire for easy money. He preyed on these vulnerabilities, creating a system where investors felt both fortunate and obligated to him. He fostered a sense of exclusivity, making his clients feel like they were part of a privileged inner circle. This sense of belonging further solidified their trust and discouraged them from questioning his methods. It's a classic example of affinity fraud, where the perpetrator exploits the trust and shared identity of a particular group. He knew that people within these tight-knit communities, like country clubs and charitable organizations, were more likely to trust recommendations from within their social circles, and he exploited this to his advantage. Absolutely. Beyond the financial aspect, there's the profound psychological impact on the victims. Many lost their life savings, their homes, and their futures. The betrayal of trust was devastating. This wasn't just about money. It was about the shattering of their faith in institutions and individuals they believed to be beyond reproach. The emotional scars of this fraud run deep, impacting not only the direct victims but also their families and communities. The Madoff case serves as a chilling reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked greed and the importance of critical thinking, even when dealing with seemingly reputable individuals. Let's delve into the investigative process, specifically the period between Madoff's son's initial report and his arrest. The FBI's involvement was swift, but their initial approach seemed almost gentle. They interviewed Madoff at his penthouse, allowing him to remain seemingly free while they began unraveling the complexities of his scheme. This approach, while possibly intended to avoid a public panic, allowed Madoff a crucial window of opportunity. There were rumors of shredded documents, transferred assets, and even hushed conversations suggesting Madoff was contemplating fleeing the country. The sheer scale of the fraud, coupled with Madoff's deep connections within the financial world, made the investigation incredibly challenging. They were chasing a ghost through a labyrinth of shell corporations and fabricated transactions. It's a chilling thought, the potential damage he could have inflicted had he managed to disappear. You're right, that initial period was critical. One element that often gets overlooked is the psychological impact on the investors during this time. Imagine the agonizing weight, clinging to dwindling hope while whispers of the investigation circulated. Some investors, desperate to recoup their losses, were targeted by recovery scams. A cruel twist of the knife. There were also reports of investors receiving taunting communications, purportedly from Madoff or his associates, claiming their money was safe, further twisting the knife. These communications, while likely hoaxes designed to exploit the vulnerable, added another layer of torment to an already devastating situation. The investigators faced a double challenge: unraveling the fraud, while simultaneously managing the escalating panic and misinformation swirling around the case. The missed leads are particularly frustrating in hindsight. Several whistleblowers, notably Harry Markopoulos, had raised red flags about Madoff's operation years before the collapse. Markopoulos, a financial analyst, meticulously documented his suspicions and presented them to the SEC multiple times, outlining the mathematical impossibility of Madoff's consistent returns. Yet, these warnings were seemingly ignored or dismissed. The reasons for this oversight are complex and controversial, ranging from bureaucratic inertia to the sheer influence Madoff wielded within the financial industry. Understanding these failures is crucial to preventing similar catastrophes in the future. The case highlights the importance of robust regulatory oversight and a system that takes whistleblowers seriously. And the false hope. That's what truly breaks my heart. Many investors, particularly those nearing retirement, had their entire life savings tied up in Madoff's funds. The initial days after the news broke were filled with frantic calls, desperate pleas, and a collective sense of disbelief. Some clung to the hope that it was all a misunderstanding, that their money would somehow be recovered. The gradual realization that everything was gone, that their future had been stolen, was a devastating blow. The human cost of this crime is immeasurable, extending far beyond the financial losses. It shattered lives, families, and communities, leaving a scar on the financial world that will likely never fully heal. The scale of Bernie Madoff's deception extended far beyond mere financial ruin. It shattered lives, families, and communities. Many victims were elderly, having entrusted their life savings to Madoff, believing their retirement was secure. They suddenly found themselves facing destitution, their golden years tainted by anxiety and despair. The psychological impact was immense. Some victims experienced severe depression, leading to health complications and, in tragic cases, even suicide. The sense of betrayal was profound, not just from Madoff himself, but also from the perceived failure of regulatory bodies to prevent such a massive fraud. This fostered a deep mistrust in financial institutions, a lingering skepticism that continues to impact investor confidence even today. Beyond the individual tragedies, the Madoff scheme had a ripple effect across entire communities. Charitable foundations, universities, and other non-profit organizations that had invested heavily with Madoff suffered crippling losses. This meant vital programs and services were cut, impacting countless individuals who relied on them. The Jewish community, in particular, was heavily affected, as Madoff had specifically targeted Jewish philanthropists and organizations. This created a sense of collective trauma within the community, a shared experience of loss and vulnerability that continues to be felt. The social fabric was torn, friendships strained, and a sense of communal trust eroded as people grappled with the devastating consequences of Madoff's actions. The long-term impact of the Madoff scheme cannot be overstated. Many victims never fully recovered financially, forced to drastically alter their retirement plans, sell homes, and rely on family for support. The emotional scars run deep, with many individuals struggling with feelings of shame, anger, and a pervasive sense of insecurity. The case serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked greed and the importance of robust regulatory oversight. It also highlights the vulnerability of individuals and communities to sophisticated financial fraud, a vulnerability that demands constant vigilance. The Madoff case also raises crucial questions about the psychology of fraud. How could someone perpetrate such a massive deception for so long? Experts suggest a complex interplay of factors, including narcissism, a sense of entitlement, and a belief in one's own invincibility. Madoff himself seemed to display a remarkable lack of remorse, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. This raises questions about the nature of psychopathy and the ability of some individuals to compartmentalize their actions, detaching themselves from the human suffering they inflict. The Madoff case provides a chilling glimpse into the mind of a master manipulator and the devastating impact such individuals can have on the lives of others. The illusion was meticulously crafted, a house of cards built on fabricated returns and forged documents. For years, Madoff managed to maintain this facade, lulling investors into a false sense of security with consistent, albeit fictitious, profits. He expertly exploited his reputation as a Wall Street veteran, leveraging his social connections and philanthropic activities to gain the trust of wealthy individuals, charitable organizations, and even financial institutions. But beneath the veneer of legitimacy, cracks were beginning to appear. Increasingly, investors began requesting withdrawals, putting a strain on the scheme's delicate balance. The system, reliant on a constant influx of new funds to pay off earlier investors, was beginning to buckle under the pressure. Madoff's carefully constructed world was teetering on the brink of collapse. The unraveling began in the fall of 2008, coinciding with the global financial crisis. As markets plummeted, redemption requests surged. Madoff, unable to meet these demands, found himself trapped in a spiraling vortex of his own making. His elaborate web of lies, sustained for so long, was finally beginning to unravel. He confided in his sons, Mark and Andrew, revealing the devastating truth. The investment fund was, in essence, a giant Ponzi scheme. The confession was a shattering blow, exposing the depth of the deception and the catastrophic consequences that were sure to follow. Overwhelmed and distraught, Mark and Andrew contacted their attorneys, who then informed the authorities. On December 11, 2008, FBI agents arrived at Madoff's Manhattan penthouse. The atmosphere was eerily calm, the gravity of the situation hanging heavy in the air. Madoff, seemingly resigned to his fate, confessed to the decades-long fraud, admitting that his entire investment operation was a sham. He described the scheme in detail, outlining the mechanics of the fraud and the extent of the losses. The amount was staggering, estimated to be close to $65 billion, making it the largest Ponzi scheme in history. The confession sent shockwaves through the financial world, leaving countless victims reeling from the devastating realization that their investments had vanished into thin air. The arrest of Bernard Madoff marked a turning point in the investigation, shifting from uncovering the truth to assessing the damage. The scene was surreal. The man who had once commanded respect and admiration now escorted away in handcuffs. The image became a symbol of the financial crisis, a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of greed. As Madoff was led away, the investigation began to focus on the victims, the thousands of individuals and organizations whose lives had been irrevocably altered by his deception. The task of unraveling the complex web of transactions and tracing the flow of money would be a monumental undertaking, one that would continue for years to come. It's chilling, isn't it, to think that for decades, Madoff operated in broad daylight, rubbing elbows with the elite, donating to charities, all while orchestrating this colossal fraud. He wasn't some shadowy figure lurking in the back alleys of finance. He was a pillar of the community, a respected figure, a former chairman of the NASDAQ. The sheer audacity of it is almost incomprehensible. He betrayed the trust of thousands, including close friends, family members, and charitable organizations. The damage he inflicted, both financially and emotionally, is immeasurable. How could someone maintain such a facade for so long? It speaks to a level of compartmentalization and deception that is truly disturbing. He clearly possessed a profound ability to manipulate and control not only his victims, but also the narrative surrounding his supposed success. Absolutely. And let's not forget the systemic failures that allowed this to happen. The Securities and Exchange Commission received numerous credible tips about Madoff's activities over the years, yet they failed to uncover the fraud. Were they incompetent, negligent, or was there something more sinister at play? These are questions that continue to haunt us. The Madoff case exposes a vulnerability within our financial systems, a vulnerability that needs to be addressed to prevent similar schemes from occurring in the future. The fact that he operated for so long, despite red flags being raised, suggests a systemic blindness, a willingness to believe in the myth of the infallible financial wizard. And that, perhaps, is the most unsettling aspect of this entire saga. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other Madoffs are out there, operating in plain sight, just waiting to be exposed? How many other seemingly legitimate businesses are built on a foundation of lies and deception? The Madoff case serves as a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that even the most trusted figures can harbor dark secrets. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil can exist anywhere, even in the most respectable circles. And it leaves us with a lingering question. If someone like Madoff could fool so many for so long, what other unseen dangers lurk beneath the surface of our seemingly stable world? Precisely. The case of Bernie Madoff isn't just a story about financial fraud. It's a story about human nature, about greed, deception, and the fragility of trust. It's a chilling reminder that the veneer of respectability can conceal profound darkness, and it leaves us with a deeply unsettling question. How well do we really know the people we trust? Thank you for walking with us through the shadows. The story doesn't end here. It lingers, echoing through time, reminding us that the darkest truths often hide in plain sight. Until next time, stay curious, and stay vigilant. This case remains unsolved. Perhaps the truth is still out there.